Well, good evening to everyone tuning in tonight for another live stream. Excuse me, it's going to be a little bit more brief tonight. Not going to go too much into any kind of forecast details, but more just talk about the impacts that Florence is already having and discuss, go through some of the storm reports and kind of look at some of the damage we're already seeing from Florence and what to expect as we continue into tonight, into tomorrow, and through Saturday, as this is going to be a very long-lived and persistent storm that's going to have impacts through at least Sunday for our area. So just kind of wanted to touch base. This is probably going to be the last live stream I do, simply because I'll probably lose power sometime tomorrow, as I am here in Johnston County, and the outer rain bands are starting to really inch their way this way. And once they get here, that's when you get your tropical storm force winds and higher gusts that really contribute to trees becoming much weaker and falling on power lines. That's when you get most of your damage and your power outages. So just kind of an update video to talk about the impacts. Won't be nearly as long as an hour, probably aiming for like 20 or 30 minutes or so. I don't have a screen crawl at the bottom this time because, number one, you should probably know your forecast impacts by now, now that the storm is, approaching landfall, but also, just it kind of lags the video, and there's more I want to show you besides just forecast. So the general thing to remember is that, you're going to see rain, you're going to see wind. It's going to be, a nasty day tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be the worst day for central North Carolina. Most of central NC can expect to see, anywhere from, 6 to 10 inches, well, 5 to 10 inches of rain in most locations, especially down here in the Sand Hills. So I'm going to jump in here and go through a couple of things that show the impact of Florence, and then I'll be wrapping it up rather shortly after that. Not going to go too much into the forecasting aspect, as it's kind of a nowcast situation with the storm already being there. So here we have a radar loop from I'm not sure if he's a graduate student or not at Florida State University, but it's a really nice color table and a nice looking radar here. You can see how symmetrical the storm has become. With it being on radar, you're seeing the real-time data, and it's a very well-defined circular storm. You can clearly see that the center of circulation down here still about 100, or maybe, I think actually the latest update, they put it about 75 miles offshore of Wilmington down here. There, it's kind of triangulating the spot between Wilmington down here, Morehead City up in this area, and then the storm center is right about here. So it's kind of sitting perpendicular to both. If you were to draw lines, kind of sitting at that position and just dumping tons of rain in this area. There's already been a report of over 12.7 inches, so over a foot of rain in Atlantic Beach down here, which is south of Morehead City. I think I'm a little thrown off by this map, but somewhere in this area already received over a foot of rain, so that 30-inch total is looking pretty likely at this point, which is what was expected. But a very symmetrical, very healthy looking storm. Certainly not good news for us inland who are going to receive these rains tomorrow. So I'm going to start back by looking at the track. Not too many updates. This is the latest advisory at 8 p.m. Maximum sustained winds are 100 miles per hour. Still a strong Category 2 storm. Barely inching northwest at about 5 miles per hour. Here's the larger wind field, and you can see the cone, how it kind of goes up and bumps up slightly, and then inches its way back down into the Midlands of South Carolina, and goes up across the Appalachian Mountains and up into the Allegheny Mountains up here and higher up toward the northeast as a depression. So it could still have a lot of rain impacts that go along with that. But this is pretty much a worst scenario situation for central and eastern North Carolina in terms of rainfall, because with the storm being down here, most of the impacts, the heavier rainfall is going to be on that northeast quadrant of the storm. So that is certainly not something that is looking good for that situation, especially with the storm already dropping about over a foot of rain in some locations along the barrier islands in North Carolina. That's certainly showing its potential to be a prolific rainmaker. So that has not changed there. Speaking of that, the rainfall potential here, there's that bullseye on southern and southeastern North Carolina. This dark kind of purple color, over 20 inches. This very tight gradient as you go northward in North Carolina. Where the northern edge of that precipitation of the storm ends up is going to determine how tight the gradient is going to be for that rainfall. So I actually have another radar app to show, currently that, that upper edges of the rain band are, around anywhere from, Wilson kind of to Greenville and up, maybe, just about Rodanthe in this area, Waves on the East Coast, Waves being the town of Waves, on the Outer Banks. And then that's going to, continue to move westward as you go on, and it could inch a little bit farther north and expand a little bit as the storm is expected to kind of make a little bit of a upward motion. And then down here, before going off, like I just showed you in the track, up this way and up into the mountains. So as that continues to go, anywhere in this area, is going to see a lot of rain tomorrow and into Saturday. So that's, certainly something to watch to see how big that precipitation shield was. With Hurricane Matthew, its eye was about, or its center, it didn't really have a defined eye when it reached North Carolina. It never actually made landfall in North Carolina. It was about 10 miles off the coast all the way down here. But, its precipitation shield reached all the way up into the Triad and up into here. So kind of the similar looking thing for Florence, with it's a very large, very well defined storm, these very dark colors. In these bands are where you're going to have your tropical storm force winds, and actually you see there's a little bit of separation with some drier air in there. It's going to be pretty significant with the hurricane force winds in there, but then on these outer edges, tropical storm force winds. Even right here in Clayton right now, I'm looking at a station a few minutes ago that was having sustained winds at 18 miles per hour with gusts higher. And I'm going to show you some of the gusts that we've seen so far along the coast. They're pretty high, so we haven't seen anything like that here, but it's going to get worse and progress into the night. Tomorrow, within 12 hours, we'll probably be, dealing with a lot more power outages out here, and I'll show you that as well. So hello to anyone who's just tuning in. Going to be a lot shorter discussion tonight, just talking about the impacts of Florence and kind of talk about where it's at now, where it's going over the next 48 hours. This will be my last live stream. I don't plan to do one tomorrow unless I do have electricity, unless I'm one of the fortunate ones that have electricity right now. About 130,000 people are without power down here, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But I'm going to take a look at a few of these questions before I move on. So, hi, Cindy. Hope you're doing well. Any further ideas on RDU area tomorrow afternoon? It's really just not looking good. You're going to, I think you said you are in the, are you in the Triad area, Teresa? I'm not entirely sure remember where you're from, but if you are coming to Raleigh from any direction besides the north, it's going to be just a rough ride. It's going to be not ideal driving conditions. It's possible, but you're definitely, I don't want to say endangering yourself and others. It's not that serious of a situation up here in Raleigh. You're still going to have tropical storm force winds, but it'll just be a nasty day. It'll be tough driving conditions. Okay, Greensboro. So you'll be commuting down I-40 here. It's not impossible to just be a very nasty day. Lots of rain. I'm not going to say don't commute, because it sounds like a situation where you actually have to go. And to people who are like work in the medical profession, who have to report to work in some of these situations, I've gotten a lot of questions about that. I need to be at work at this time. When should I leave? And tomorrow as a whole is just going to be a really gross day across this whole this whole fringe of North Carolina. Probably anywhere in here is just going to have some really bad conditions. You just saw the radar animate right there. You saw it kind of tick, and it's a slow mover. So once it starts raining, it's not going to stop for several hours. So just use extreme caution, plan extra time. Don't try to rush anything. Give yourself plenty of time, and the wind's going to make it harder to stay on the road with tropical storm force winds. Your car acts like a big sail against that. So just use caution, but it's totally possible. Just use extreme caution, and stay alert when you're driving, and you should be okay. Going to RDU. Hi, Cindy. How does it look from Moore County? Moore County's in one of those positions where you and Fayetteville are kind of, if I animate this, might give you something more interesting to look at than just a still image. Down here in Moore County, it depends exactly on where in Moore County you are. If you're in the northwestern part, up here, the gradient's going to greatly increase as you go farther south toward Rockingham. I'm having a blank on this county's name. Oh my goodness, I pride myself on these county names. But the farther you go down to Scotland County and Hope County down here, you're going to have more of an issue with wind gusts. I think there's going to be a really tight gradient on the wind gust. But tomorrow, Pinehurst, Southern Pines, Vass, all of those areas are going to start really seeing that pickup. Probably in the wee hours of the morning, probably about 4 to 6 a.m. or so. And around sunrise tomorrow will be when conditions really start to get kind of nasty around there. I'm up here in Johnston County. It looks like I'm going to start getting some of these outer rain bands soon enough. And then, once they get there, they're going to sit for a long time. So, in Moore County, I think you can probably expect to see, sustained winds, probably 40 to 60 miles per hour with some gusts up to hurricane force possible. I'm not sure if you're actually in that warning, and I can actually check this. I was going to show this. So it looks like I can't actually move it over, but with Moore County, let's see here. I can't exactly tell. I don't know if you're in a hurricane warning or a a tropical storm warning, but you're going to, have pretty bad conditions come tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be your worst day. Same for me. Anyone in the central part of North Carolina, your worst day is going to be tomorrow. Where from sunrise to sunset, you're just going to be experiencing heavy rain, gusty winds. You're probably going to lose power because it's just going to be so persistent, and our infrastructure is not built to handle prolonged periods. We can handle thunderstorms and small gusts of wind every once in a while, but it's not meant to hold its own against these strong winds that last for so long, especially with higher gusts. And Florence is still, it's still pumping out here. It's still going. If I animate it, it's still over warm water. It's not weakening yet. It's not, until that center of circulation gets completely over land, it's able to draw up that warm water. So, if you start feeling rain in the center of circulation still offshore, it's going to get, a lot worse. So I would just plan for, that heavy rain to start overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. It'll last through then. Hi, Amy. Hope you're doing well. Greensboro. Do you have start and end guesstimates for Greensboro? So to start, I would say probably afternoon time tomorrow, sometime around there, maybe more into the evening and lasting into Saturday. I think your worst conditions will be kind of midday Friday through midday Saturday, as opposed to central North Carolina seeing the worst of conditions all day tomorrow. The end time's really unclear because it's not entirely sure, how fast the storm's going to move once it does come online, how fast it'll weaken. When it weakens, will it be able to pull as much moisture off of the ocean and still, dump heavy amounts of rain? That's kind of unclear. So as far as the start time, I would say, tomorrow around mid-afternoon to evening would be when you see the onset of the worst weather. End time's really not clear, but I would prepare for it to be through at least late day Saturday. Greensboro, same thing. That was to another question. I'm sorry about that, Teresa. Hi, Josh. Hope you're doing well. For High Point, same thing with Greensboro. I think you'll see the onset of your weather tomorrow. Probably sustained winds, 20 to 30 miles per hour with gusts up to 50 or 60 possible. So definitely tropical storm force conditions in that aspect. Heavy rain probably expect anywhere from 3 to 6 inches with locally higher amounts possible. Not as bad as these areas down here that are getting hammered tonight. Most of the storm should be a little bit weaker by the time it gets to your location, but the whole triad area you can expect most of your activity to start later tomorrow into midday Saturday. Thank you so much. Absolutely, Cindy. Thank you for asking. Reedsville, you're a little bit farther north, so you might not be too bad. I can actually go back to this radar, up here. So I would say, this line right here might be, midnight tonight. And then, Durham to Greensboro would probably be, 4 to 6 a.m. And then, into Greensboro and the Triad, probably getting to that area, midday tomorrow into early afternoon into early evening. But there will be a very sharp cutoff here. So Reedsville, you may be in the zone that really doesn't get a whole lot from Florence, unless the storm just continues to grow in size. You're still not going to get a ton of, probably not going to get a ton of rain. There's going to be a really sharp gradient where, like right here in Bertie County right here, the southern part of the county is getting walloped right now with tropical, downpours. And up here, they're not seeing anything right now. There's a really sharp gradient on what can happen between a small, area in these tropical storms because they're so selective. And if you're not under that, heavy precipitation, you might not pick up anything. So it's important to keep that in mind. Don't be surprised if, your neighbor, 10 miles to the south gets, 2 more inches of rain than you. It's possible with these systems because they're very selective and very precise. Hi, Tim. Hope you're doing well. So I'm going to go back here and go through a couple of these. I don't want to stream for too long tonight, so I want to go to some of the impacts that we're seeing right now. If I go over to the latest hurricane statement. So this was at the 8 p.m. Release. So down here, I'm going to skip through this paragraph and read more of the impacts. So, wind data from the Hurricane Hunter aircraft indicate that the maximum sustained winds remain near 100 miles per hour with higher gusts. So still a high-end Cat 2 storm. Don't underestimate Category 2. I pulled up a picture specifically for a case I'll show you in just a second after I finish reading this of what a Category 2 storm can do. So this is what I wanted to show you, though. Hurricane force winds extend outward up to 80 miles from the center, and tropical storm force winds extend outward up to 195 miles. So if I show you this on the radar that I was just showing, I'm going to pause it here and then get the ruler out. The center of the storm right here. So hurricane force winds are extending out up to 80. So it's pretty on par with what the Hurricane Center said of this outer band. Anywhere within here, you have the potential to see hurricane force winds. And tropical storm force winds are extending up to 200 miles away from the center of the storm. I think it said 195. So if you're anywhere within this dome, you're still at chance of seeing, and you don't have to be under a rain band or any kind of rain to see those kind of wind gusts, but it's much more likely in the in the rain band, because what happens is, in the clouds, the wind's blowing really fast aloft. So here's the cloud deck up here. That's a very ugly cloud. You have your clouds and all, the air is going much faster up here. But when you have precipitation coming down and through the cloud, it's raining up in the cloud too before it exits. It's kind of a transfer of momentum, and you can think of it as the rain's helping push that wind down to the ground. So it's much easier to get higher wind gusts in rain because there's already downward motion in that system that's letting that wind get to the ground easier. So you can still have a wind gust outside, a dry wind gust, I guess you could say, outside of any rain, but it's much more likely that you'll see gustier winds, and that rain will be blowing at kind of an angle because of, that momentum transfer from the wind in the upper levels of the atmosphere down to the ground. Under rain, you're much more likely to see those higher wind gusts. So that is something to keep in mind. You're probably not going to see the stronger winds until the rain kind of settles in. Down in Kinston, looks like they're really starting to get hammered. Earlier, I was watching it, enter New Bern, and then it covered New Bern up to Kinston and slowly inching its way. I think Goldsboro had a gust up to 35 miles per hour not too long ago. So it's definitely coming. It's taking its time, which is terrible because it means that flooding is a big issue, and it's a slow mover, so flooding will be big. And also, just overall, it's not moving very fast. So when it gets to your location, it's going to stay there for a while. Continuing from this little paragraph, a NOAA observing site at Cape Lookout, North Carolina, with the pretty diamond lighthouse. That's Cape Lookout. Recently reported a sustained wind of 82 miles per hour and a gust to 97 miles per hour. So, this is a NOAA observing station. So this is an official station. It's an official observation of 82 miles per hour sustained and gusts to 97. That's enough to do some structural damage. That's the kind of wind that does actual damage to buildings that, more than just rip shingles off, downs trees, can rip some siding off of houses and can damage some windows. So some pretty stout winds out there. And then a weather flow station at Fort Macon in Atlanta, right next to Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, recently reported sustained wind of 67 miles per hour and a gust of 99. Now, what's important about this is that you're seeing a gust that's even higher with lower sustained winds than you did at this report. So it's important to remember that, you can still see gust outside of, where the strongest winds are. The hurricanes, like I was saying, are very particular, and they have, a lot of momentum. They're huge, powerful storms, a lot of energy contained within them, and they can kind of expend that energy at any given time in any given cell, any given cell within like a rain band. So you're at risk of seeing a gust that high, and that one gust can be what, sends a tree on top of a power line and causes power failure due to one gust. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to have sustained winds that are super high, which 67 miles per hour is a very mean wind. It's, that's pretty intense, but you don't have to have sustained winds of hurricane force to have a gust up to, near 100 miles per hour. So I thought that was kind of interesting to look at. Down here, the storm surge threat, Cape Fear to Cape Lookout, 7 to 11 feet. That forecast is a little bit down, but that's still devastating storm surge for those areas. And the Neuse, Pamlico, Pungo, and Bay Rivers, Cape Lookout to Ocracoke Island can still expect 6 to 9 feet, 4 to 6 feet for Ocracoke Inlet and down the South Santee River into Cape Fear. Still a very formidable situation in terms of storm surge as the storm continues to go down into South Carolina over the coming days. So it's going to be a Carolina storm, and it's going to linger with us for a while. So I will go over to here. Looks like a new report. So this is a neat tool. It's called a Radar Lab HD from WeatherTap, and it shows storm reports that kind of light up on these little boxes on top of the radar. So here we have at 9:39 p.m., emergency manager reported that a tide gauge in Oriental, which is near, in Pamlico County, about 30 or so miles east of New Bern, observed a storm surge of 6.5 feet above normal water level. So that's significant. That's about as tall as a human being. That's pretty significant storm surge. This report down here, Department of Highways reported that the Ferry Division reported a storm surge of 10 feet above normal water levels for the Cherry Branch Ferry Terminal. So also a very substantial storm surge there as well. This one just popped up. It looks like a National Weather Service employee reported a gust of 82 miles per hour at the National Weather Service office. So they must have been, they have data. Sorry, that was a chair squeak that made that noise. Right there at their office, they recorded a wind gust of 82 miles per hour. So, Florence is meaning business. It's not losing its strength. As a Category 2, it's going to have these really high wind gusts, and it's still a very significant storm, and is going to be for the coming days. So keep that in mind. There are a couple of other reports that the reports stay on here for some time, but then they'll eventually dissipate so that the map doesn't get too crowded. But the National Weather Service loads all of these. So I'm going to refresh the page. It's in real time mode, so it picks up all of them. And we'll go through a few of these because some of them are pretty, just, go to show you that the impacts from the storm, range along a very they range across a very wide area, and the impacts themselves are pretty diverse in how they, whether it be wind or water, the storm has a lot of ways that it can, really wreck your day and make some havoc. So, just going through some of these, I'll go down the list here. Landing road is impassable due to storm surge. A power line down at the corner of the street, more storm surge. That's the one I just read for there. Down here is the report of heavy rain measured by U.S. Geological Survey rapid deployment gauge in Atlantic Beach measured 12.73 inches of rain in one day, which is remarkable. Harker's Island, multiple trees down at Harker's Island. Down here, heavy rain. 1 hour measurement of 1.5 inches at the National Weather Service Newport. That's pretty substantial too, to receive 1.5 inches of rain in an hour. Very, very serious conditions. A gust of 96 miles per hour at Cape Lookout recorded. Trying to see some of these that say hurricane, because that'll tell you hurricane force wind gust. Storm surge flooding, an estimated 1 to 2 feet of the Pamlico Plantation along Broad Creek in Beaufort County, relayed by a National Weather Service employee. Multiple trees down once again. That's going to be a popular one you see. That's the 70 mile per hour wind gust at Fort Macon so far. Sustained winds of 64 miles per hour, gusting to 77 in Harker's Island as well. Some more down here. This is a correction to a previous report, so it's correcting that wind speed to 62 miles per hour. What does a few miles per hour difference make? In record keeping, it's significant, but otherwise it's, the impacts of a 62 mile per hour gust minus a 60, versus a 64 mile per hour wind gust is negligible, but, we have to make sure we're keeping these, records. Another automated weather station reporting northeast winds at 51 miles per hour, gusting to 77 knots. So, lots going on here. You can look at this. So if you just Google National Weather Service local storm reports viewer, you can look at all these and see the kind of impact it's already having. And the storm hasn't even made landfall yet. Keep in mind, the storm is still about 75 miles off of land. Here's the coastline right here. Here's Wilmington. It's still about 75 miles off land. So this is all happening while it still has not made landfall. And when it does, that's when that storm surge gets the worst. There might, you see gaps in the radar here. You might think, there's nothing happening here, but there's still a massive amount of wind in this area due to the structure of the storm, how these storms work. It doesn't have to be raining for there to be wind. So it's still going to push a massive amount of water. And to that point, we haven't even reached the high tide of the day yet. Next high tide, looking at the NOAA Tides and Currents website, is at 11:27 p.m. So we're approaching it very soon. But the tidal flooding the tides have not even contributed to the storm surge yet. So the worst of the flooding, we'll probably see a peak in the local flooding tonight, and then it'll drop down to low tide overnight about 6:02 a.m. I guess that's more morning than night. And then once again tomorrow morning, right around noon, that'll be worse again. So I expect the worst of the flooding to be late mid-morning tomorrow for the coastal areas. That is for those areas to receive their worst storm surge, because high tide, so the tide will be coming in addition to the hurricane force winds blowing that water up, plus all the rain that's falling. It's going to make for a disastrous situation out there. So this is exactly what, was being said about the forecast, how the tidal cycle has a, major impact on, kind of ushering that water in. And then when you have the hurricane force winds blowing it on, it just makes a disastrous scenario. So, we haven't even reached the high tide of the day yet, and we've already had some massive flooding in New Bern. There's so much information to cover. So there are probably other areas that have flooded. I'm sure there are, but New Bern gets the most attention because it's the most populated area right now that I think has seen the worst of the flooding. So going over to here, I was talking about the power of a Category 2 hurricane. I wanted to quickly show you this picture that, some people have actually unevacuated. I've seen some reports of people actually coming back to their homes because they said, it was downgraded to a Category 2. This is a picture from Hurricane Ike, the aftermath, I guess I should say, of Hurricane Ike in 2008, so about 10 years ago. And this was this nice, quaint beach community beforehand. And then, 6 days later, after the hurricane had come through, it was also a Category 2. It was a very large storm. It looked a little disorganized as it was approaching land, but then it slowed down and caused massive flooding and caused this storm surge, which, if I zoom in here, here was before. Here are these two houses for reference. And this was after, when these two houses were lucky enough to stay standing, but the rest of this area was flattened. And, it's literally when the ocean comes inland and washes that away. So that's a possibility. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen in this situation, but it's a possibility for that, that kind of situation to happen. In this case, with lots of seawater coming on shore and washing up those houses. So that's certainly a possibility with this kind of a storm surge. It's not certain, but it's most likely that something is happening. So looking at the power outages, this every time I refresh this, it continues to climb, because with that rain and wind combined, it's just a disaster on the power grid, and it really makes it hard to keep power on everywhere. Excuse me. So currently we're looking at 134,596, so 135,000 customers. And remember, that's customers. That doesn't tell you the number of people that are in the dark right now. The number of customers. So the actual people affected by the power outage is always higher than the customers. So just keep that in mind. But you can see the counties that are hit the worst. The warmer the color, the more power outages. I'll go into a detailed view in a second, but all the way up, to Hyde County, up here in Washington County, up Edgecombe County, Chatham County, Greene County, Lenore County, Pender County, all these perimeter counties from the perimeter effects of the storm have been pretty significant, and have still had some power outages out there with those outer rain bands. But also down here in Carteret County and Pamlico County, last I checked, 98.9% of Carteret County is in the dark right now. It's a pretty populated county. You have Morehead City, you have Havelock, you have Cherry Point Marine Corps Air Station. It's a populated area, and almost 99% of the customers are without power there, so they're going to have a rough night there. Pamlico County, that's where Oriental and Bayboro is. 97.6% of those customers are out. These are areas that are really getting hammered by the storm right now. Up into Craven County, where New Bern is, 71% of the customers without power. These also, remember, these counties also include the coastal communities. So like Onslow County here, you think of, mainly the inland, but this includes like areas like Topsail Beach, where, about a third of the people are without power right now. So I expect that number to probably, quadruple by this time to probably within about 12 to 16 hours, with all of this spreading inland, where you get into more cities like Kinston and Lenore County and Goldsboro and Fayetteville, Bladenboro down here into Whiteville, Brunswick County, New Hanover County are probably going to get, really bad conditions that really deteriorate overnight as the storm continues to march westward and come on land. So these, the power outages are really getting, really starting to ramp up, and this has jumped about 50,000 people just in the last hour. So it's accumulating very quickly, and it's quite scary when your power goes out and you hear the winds howling outside, and you have the rain battering against your house. So a pretty frightening situation for those people, but hopefully they are prepared, and they expected, the power to go out with the winds, and have, prepared for that, and are, doing well with that tonight. And I can almost, think that, if I refresh the page every other time I refresh the page, the outage number jumps up. So that continues to grow and will continue to grow throughout the remainder of the night. I wanted to wrap up here. I guess I could actually show you the current state of the storm. That's not just radar. So this is the long wave infrared satellite imagery. So we look at this view because we can't see, the daylight is not, the sun's not out, so we can't see a visible shot of the storm. But you can see, this outer band, there's actually no precipitation associated with it. It's just a cloud feature that's been pushed out away from the storm. But it had some, pretty robust convection, some pretty big thunderstorms that fired up here. That's what those darker colors mean. It's representing clouder or cooler cloud tops, I should say, which means that the thunderstorms are reaching higher up into the sky, the atmosphere, and producing, stronger. That's where some of the stronger wind gusts are probably originating from in the coastal communities down here. But you can see it's still sitting off the coast here and still just spinning. You can see the, almost perfect circular nature of the storm. And that's reflected in that the radar imagery, where it's just become a very circular storm. And that's, the situation we have with still the category 2, and it'll continue to move westward, and the satellite appearance, will vary. There's a couple of dry air pockets in here, but it's still going to be a formidable rain producer and wind producer. So I wanted to kind of wrap up here with a briefing for, this will kind of cover some of the questions about specific locations as well. This is current as of 5:30 p.m. So this is the latest briefing that National Weather Service in Raleigh has put out. And this is not Florence. This is a picture of Floyd might be a friend actually, several years ago, but that's not a current image. But this just kind of, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but they have a great amount of information here. It's a PDF, it's a PowerPoint presentation that they've exported into a PDF file you can view online. And this, summary of the greatest impacts. So we have our flash flooding, extreme threat in the Piedmont Sandhills and coastal plain. It's just going to take time for that rain to come in. don't think that just because you didn't receive rain today, you're not going to receive rain. It's coming. It's going to work its way, and once it gets to your location, it's going to sit there for a while. Power outages are likely with the wind and the rain combination there. River flooding is very high in the Sandhills and Coastal Plain, as well as all the water that falls in central North Carolina has to go somewhere and ends up going downstream, down the gradient, and with gravity down to the coast. The tornado, there has been a tornado warning in the past, not current, for Wilson County and a couple on the coast, but that threat has been pretty limited and will probably remain that way. Power outage, you can see the threat significant, and the wind from points Raleigh south and east is very significant. So the main points basically echo what I just said there, so I'm not going to show that again. This is just the track and update, which we reviewed that earlier. I wanted to go down here. These graphics kind of echo the same thing, but I wanted to show the maps that the Raleigh National Weather Service made, showing the wind threat and then the rain threat as well. So the wind threat with high, moderate, and elevated levels here, that kind of gives you a better picture. So up in the Triad, you're in that elevated risk. More in the Raleigh area, Sanford, the Moore County area, to the viewer who asked about that, down into Rockingham County and Scotland County, in that moderate zone, and then Goldsboro, Clinton, Fayetteville is actually in that high threat for wind. And if you were to extend this map further down into Duplin County and down into Pender County and toward Wilmington, you'd see that wind threat jump up to the extreme level. So the expected peak wind gusts, these amounts might be a little bit conservative by the Weather Service, but expected peak wind gusts, I'll zoom in here for anyone who may be viewing on their phone. This is a 72-hour wind maximum. So this would be sustained wind. So this is over a 2-minute period. This would be the average wind speed that you see. So this doesn't mean a gust of 35 miles per hour in Smithfield. That means that the wind is blowing constantly at 35 miles per hour for at least 2 minutes. So 72 hours, that goes out 3 days. So up in Winston-Salem, you see a 19, you think that's not, I think that's a little bit underdone, at least at this point. But, that wind is coming, and this coloration as we go from southeast to northwest, shows that kind of progression of the wind. So it's going to take some time to get there, but it's coming. I guarantee you that. As far as the wind gusts, these are the kinds of things that can down trees and cause the power outages, because the wind will suddenly spike up, and the gust, that's the short-lived burst of wind that is really loud and really scary. It sounds like your house is going to blow in, and I've heard a lot of the descriptions of it. Your floor starts vibrating in your home because the wind is blowing so hard. But up in Winston-Salem, 33 miles per hour, that's a formidable wind gust that can still take down a tree if that tree is weak or if the ground's very saturated, which will likely occur when that rain moves inland. And then this gradient, is very tight as you go closer down here. And, Moore County, Sanford, Raleigh, this kind of band here for the US 1 corridor, 40 to 50 miles per hour, Johnston County, Fayetteville, Upper Sampson County, and Wayne County, Wilson and Tarboro in that 50 to, 55 range. And then Goldsboro, Clinton, things go south really quickly down here in Ivanhoe and the very tip of Sampson County. Down here, I think that's the Black River that actually goes through right here near that community. 76 miles per hour of wind gust. That's over hurricane force. That's enough to cause some damage. Excuse me. So, you can kind of interpolate this for the other counties to kind of get an idea if you're outside of this zone. This is just for the Raleigh warning area, which covers most of central North Carolina. So I thought that was the best representative image to show. But it's certainly coming, and just wait for it and hunker down. The 7-day rainfall forecast, once again, there it is with that bullseye in southern North Carolina with a sharp gradient as you go up, just simply because the storm can only reach so far north, and it's going to stay contained to that circulation. So the farther north you are, the drier you'll likely be. The flooding rain threat, here's another one of those impact graphics that show, the purple with the highest level threat, yellow with the lowest threat. So I'll leave it on here for a second so you can see that map and, the major flooding. So all of this rain up here, even if it's a lower threat, if any rain falls down here, it's eventually going to work its way downstream and meander in those rivers. And river flooding is a bigger concern as you go down to the coast, because there's already water being pushed up by the storm surge and by the hurricane. And then that water is going to go downstream down the river and still cause some major issues. So that's something to keep in mind, that, this would be the threat that lingers after the fact. So the storm surge is happening while the storm is coming on shore. The winds are happening while the storm is occurring, but then the river flooding and urban flooding happens well after the storm has gone usually. And, it's plenty sunny and it's a very pretty day outside, but the water still has to work its way downstream, and that takes some time. So, the river flooding threat can linger for several days. The tornado potential is very low. I talked about that There's been a couple of warnings. I don't know if there's been any confirmed circulations, but they can spin up very quickly with that friction at the lower levels while the upper level winds are still going strong. And then, that's just another graphic showing that tornado threat. And I'm not going to go any lower than this because they just show individual rivers, such as the Cape Fear River at Fayetteville. But basically, to sum up the next several slides, there's the potential for, to surpass some record crest in some locations. With Matthew, it was bad, bad flooding pretty much everywhere, but certain rivers had a higher impact because we had a lot of thunderstorms before Hurricane Matthew that saturated the ground and already made the rivers already a little bit elevated. But with Florence so far, we've been in a pretty dry period. So hopefully impacts are kept at bay in terms of that, but it's still going to be a very bad flooding situation. So don't let, the dry period beforehand fool you into thinking that flooding is not going to be bad, because there's going to be a lot of water dumped over the Carolinas in the next couple of days. And it's going to lead to some major river flooding, which spills out into communities and becomes, a big problem. So that's not to minimize that, but I will leave it on this radar loop actually, because it's probably the highest quality radar loop. Looks like we have one last question. With Florence coming to a crawl, now do you feel that it's going to follow the Euro models and go southwest? So yeah, the current forecast track, if I were to draw it over this area, to animate this to the start of the storm, it's going to take a little bit, looks like it's kind of bearing north a little bit, kind of go right toward Wilmington, skip over the southern part of North Carolina down here into the coastal plain of South Carolina, then into the Midlands to Columbia, and then it's supposed to be caught by a weakness in the ridge and kind of go up this way, up into the Appalachian Mountains. I can't go off the map anymore that way, but it will go way up here on the west side of the Appalachians and still have the potential. So anytime the track is along here, your heaviest rain is going to occur on the north and east side. So, if as long as this is up in this area, central North Carolina and upstate South Carolina, in this area, not the upstate, but the upper central part of South Carolina is still going to be dealt a great deal of rain. So, I think that the European model probably had the right solution there, but, I haven't even looked at the recent model runs. That was the chair, excuse me. I don't think it's going to be too far off from that, projection, but I haven't even looked at the models today. I've been more focused on the impact. So that'll be something we reanalyze after the storm to see how each model did and see, what was the situation. But currently, we're focused on the impact. So that'll be an interesting analysis that we look at after the fact. But for now, I just, I gave an update on the storm. I'm going to wrap the broadcast up here and go, finish some last minute preparations. We had I had some food for supper and going to make sure all of my hurricane snacks are ready and make sure my flashlights are ready to go, and time to get some rest, because tomorrow will be a long day with lots of rain and lots of wind and most likely a power outage. So it'll be a little bit warm. So, make sure that you all get some rest. It's hard to get rest when the wind's howling against, your house, but try to get some rest and we'll get through the storm. It'll slowly make its way out of here, but in a couple of days, Florence will be a thing of the past. So we will hope for that and hope that the storm continues to weaken, despite its healthy appearance on the radar right now. So I'm going to sign off here. If you have any questions, feel free to message me or tweet me on Twitter at AndrewWXCenter. I will post this up to YouTube because I have a different audience there who likes to watch the videos. So, you can view it there as well, or you watch the stream at any time. Feel free to share. But until then, I'm not planning to do a live stream tomorrow unless by some miracle I do have electricity. But until then, I will talk to you as soon as I regain power and Florence hopefully has skirted on out of here. So stay safe, make smart decisions if you have to drive, and remember to, hunker down and spend some time with friends and family. If you're at home, if you're, in an evacuated location, make smart decisions and stay safe. And I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.